Hello, Andy. This is Colin. I won't be able to get in tonight. I'm sweating like a pig.
And we're back. One Up Gaming, episode 350. And we've got a special guest. So if you'd just like to introduce yourself and just say what you do, please.
My name's Mike Jaret Schachter. I am the Chief Bidet Officer at Running with Scissors. We are the studio behind all of the Postal games, which started back in 1997 with Postal 1 and most recently with Postal 4, which is out for PC and PlayStation 4 and 5.
So I think people remember the original Postal game. I think it was a good game, but it got a lot of negative press just because of all the violence. Did you guys purposely make a game that would be a bit controversial?
Well, personally, I wasn't at Running with Scissors back in 96, 97. I was in high school. But I was sort of around when it came out. Like, I knew Vince and Vince's son. I can't speak to their actual motivations when making the game, but at the time, the studio was actually called Rydell Software and was working on a bunch of children's software, like award-winning children's software, like Wishbone and Hanna-Barbera and Sesame Street games. And in 96, they decided, we should make something that we want to play, that we want to, that we own, right? Instead of just doing work for hire. So that's where they came up with the company name, Running with Scissors, which basically means to do something that your mother told you not to do. And the idea for Postal was sort of to make a Robotron style spinoff that just happened to be violent. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure their intent was to be a little bit edgy and different, right? Back then, there were no games where you could just shoot innocent bystanders in the level. Like, every game was sort of a Doom or Quake knockoff where you're either shooting Space Marines or aliens, zombies, things like that. And Postal really gave you your first foray into just being able to shoot anyone at any time. Obviously, that's not the intent of the game. The intent of the game, obviously, to pass each level was to shoot the hostiles. So you actually are only required to shoot the people that are shooting at you, but you can obviously shoot the people that are not shooting at you. GTA 1 didn't come out for a little while after Postal 1, so obviously the trend towards that type of game was coming up. Postal's been around for a long time and done a lot of good stuff, but Grand Theft Auto really took the mantle there of bringing gaming to the next level and into homes everywhere. We're still this little indie company that laughs at what we do and we have fun doing it, but we're real hand to mouth and small, whereas GTA is obviously a household name and one of the biggest media products in history. So
I mean, do you reckon that a bit of the narrative is Grand Theft Auto, as you say, it was a massive publisher, massive promotion campaign, everything. They probably paid all the magazines at the time thousands of pounds to promote their game. Do you reckon at the time that it was easier for the magazines, because I wouldn't say internet, because back then it was like all magazines.
Sure.
It's easier for the magazines to say Grand Theft Auto is amazing because it's got a story, it's got a world, it's got all this new concept, and your little indie game, it's just killing people, and do you know what I mean? It's
there's definitely more of a narrative with Grand Theft Auto, but to be fair, Postal 1 had a big publisher as well. It was a company that was created called Ripcord, which was a subsidiary of Panasonic, and actually Take-Two was involved in Postal 1 as well. It's not like we didn't have the backing. It's just that Postal 1 took the brunt of the political problems. I mean, GTA has had its fair share of political problems over the years, but they've avoided what we've had to go through. I mean, Postal 1 got taken in front of the United States Senate by Joseph Lieberman and was denounced as one of the worst things for the kids in 1997, which sounds like an amazing promotion, right? But at the same time, it also terrified our publisher. And Panasonic was like not happy to have anything to do with that and basically took the game off of all store shelves and told us to go away. So what could have been a massive future for Postal 1 ended up sort of pushing us further into the cult and into the ether. I mean, I can't say I'm unhappy that that's how it went, because who knows if I would be part of the company if Postal 1 had been some massive tour de force in 1997. You know, if the game had been really huge and Panasonic really moved forward with making more games with us, who knows if I'd be involved in this product. But you know, I'm here, and we've sort of made it through the years despite everything that's happened. You know, when Postal 2 came out, which I was a part of, I didn't think putting it out was going to be much of a problem. I mean, GTA 3 was selling like hotcakes at the time, and it was no problem. You know, Rockstar had a bunch of extremely violent titles coming out, and for whatever reason, we could not shake the name problem we had. And that was just that the game was called Postal. You know, Postal was such a big problem in the 90s that, you know, 2003 rolls around and no publisher wanted to touch us with a 10-foot pole. And it's not like Postal 2 doesn't have a story. It does. Postal 2 compared to Postal 1 is like an entirely different genre of game. That said, it's still violent and has some offensive stuff in it, but it does lean more into the slapstick humor. It does have what I would call somewhat of a story versus Postal 1, but it didn't matter. You know, we ended up with some sort of boutique crappy publisher that basically got us nowhere, and Postal 2 really kind of just lived internationally. Our international publishers were selling tons of units in Germany and in Russia and in Europe, but our domestic publisher wasn't doing anything with it. I mean, Postal 2, while today it is considered this like relatively large indie title that's lasted for a long time, it didn't really come into the modern lexicon until we got it onto Steam, which was in 2012. So it wasn't for 10 years until after Postal 2 was out, that it really became more of a well-known title. And, you know, a lot happened between Postal 2 being released in 2003 and Postal 2 being re-released on Steam in 2012. So we went through a lot, and a lot of different variations of the company. There was even a Postal 3, which we didn't make and was a total shit show and a stain on gaming history. But yeah, I mean, Postal 2 really is the title we're known for, but it's not because it came out with a bang. It did not come out with a bang, and it really did take a long time to become what it is today. So,
but I mean, I think back then when Postal 2 came out, again in the UK press, there was one magazine gave it like 8 or 9 out of 10, and then another magazine gave it 3 out of 10, saying it's an absolutely broken mess of a game.
Actually, Postal 2 was given a Guinness record for the most critically divisive game in history, and not because it got a 3 and an 8, because it got a 10 and a 0. If you back in the day, there was no Metacritic. It was a site called GameRankings.com, and the aggregate sites, one of them, I can't remember the site, gave it 100%. Crazy town, but gave it 100%. And then Computer Gaming World, which is one of the largest magazines on the planet at the time, gave Postal 2 a 0. And the infamous quote in that review was that until they packaged syphilis, Postal 2 is the worst product ever foisted upon the consumer. So we've actually run with that quote for the last 20 years. And worst game ever is a trademark we own now. And we put slightly better than boxed syphilis and worst game ever on everything we sell. I mean, do I think the reviewer was wrong? Yeah, but it was a hilarious quote, and I'm actually friends with the guy now. I can't say he loves us, but you know, he knows that quote sort of went down. And I think that it is easier nowadays for the press to hate on us because they know we use these quotes than what they would normally give out. I mean, I'm not saying we sit around making amazing games. We don't. We really like just making pieces of shit that we laugh at. But the media does not have a great relationship with our with our history. So
I mean, as you were saying, Postal 3, it's erased from history basically. What made you
Postal 3 sucks.
Yeah.
Postal 3 sucks. I sell stickers on my site that says Postal 3 sucks.
So was it the fact that it was so bad that you guys had to go back in, and was it a 12-year gap between Postal 2 and the DLC that came out?
Yeah, Postal 2 came out in 2003, and Paradise Lost came out in 2015. Yeah, I mean, Postal 3, long story short, our Russian publishers that had made a ton of money off of Postal 2 wanted to be involved with Postal 3. They wanted to fund it. They had, 100 something developers at their office. They were making pretty high quality games. And so they licensed the rights to make Postal 3. And we were working on it with them, but like only high level stuff. We designed the game. We had a couple of modelers at the house, in-house. We had a 2D artist that made all the animated cutscenes. But the game spun out of control with the economic downturn that happened in 2008. I mean, the Russian gaming industry just like tanked beyond repair. Every good programmer and artist left the industry. The game ended up being sort of packaged together by much less quality developers over time, and Akela put out what is now known as one of the worst games ever. That came out in Christmas of 2011, and it wasn't until a few months after that we applied for Postal 2 to be on Steam. We had been trying for 5 years to get Postal 2 on Steam, and Valve just kept telling us no. And then they launched a service called Greenlight, which allowed indies to put up their concepts and the fans to vote on what they wanted to be there. So we threw Postal 2 up there, and even though it got pulled down at first because Valve thought it was just fans doing that, it ended up getting voted through, got put up on Steam, and like all of a sudden we're selling tons of copies of this game, and we have all this money coming in, and we're like, okay, well, we need to fix the game. We need to include Steamworks stuff, achievements, all that good stuff. But once we finished with all that, we were like, well, shit, we need to do something for these people. And we had all these, these modders that were helping us out. And we're like, well, they all know the engine, so we might as well make an add-on for Postal 2. And so sometime in 2014, I think, which, it's 11 plus years later, we have a team working on an entire total conversion DLC of Postal 2 called Paradise Lost. And it came out in 2015, and it's still one of the highest rated DLCs on Steam. It's definitely one of the latest releasing add-ons for a game ever, and we're very proud of it, and it really sort of brought us to where we are today. I mean, we've had a couple of misses since. We worked on a remake of Postal 1 called Postal Redux, which, while it is a very good remake, it just never sold well. We worked on a VR title for a couple of years that just never came out. That's not Postal related. It's called Assault and Battery. And that sort of led us into Postal 4 back in like 2018. So, everything post Postal 3, which didn't help, it essentially would have put any normal studio out of business. Steam putting out Postal 2 really revived us and allowed us to stay alive, and is why we're here today. So,
I know you were sort of saying about the Russian development. One of my favorite games, you probably won't have heard of it because it's for the Amiga 1200, and it was called Cannon Fodder. And they had like Cannon Fodder 1 and 2. It's like a squad-based, really small sprites, point and click with a mouse, guiding your men, shooting the enemies. And it was like a tongue-in-cheek war simulator sort of game. It was really fun. And then the designers let some Russian team make the third game, and that was an abomination of a game.
Sounds familiar. Yeah. Sounds familiar. I don't think it was going to be bad. The original team that was working on the game was actually very good, and the original tech demo was very good, but those guys all left the team, and the people that came in, the game was too big. It was designed too big for them, and they couldn't handle it. We switched to Source Engine for some reason, and it was just a nightmare, just all around. And it's unfortunate that the game never got fixed. They released it. It was completely broken. They did release one patch which at least fixed a few things and made it so the opening level didn't crash, but then they fired the whole team. So Postal 3 had sort of been sitting in this fucked up state on Steam for about 10 years. And then last year, the DRM that they never took off the game for some fucking reason broke. I'm guessing it's because it was Star Force, and Star Force is based in Russia, and the war, something got disconnected, and people couldn't even boot Postal 3 anymore because the DRM was crashing. So Valve pulled Postal 3 off of Steam, which doesn't bother me in the slightest, aside from the fact that I get 10 to 15 emails a day asking me for Steam keys for a game that doesn't work. So it sort of sucks. I mean, even though the game's terrible, at least there was a place for people to buy it. There are places for people to buy it today. I mean, you can use it. There's a gaming site called Zoom Platform, which is different than the Zoom we're talking on right now, and they sell a DRM free version of Postal 3. Unfortunately, it appears they only sell in US dollars and don't allow many international people to buy it. So it's kind of fucked up, but there's nothing we can do about it. I'd love to be able to say I could fix it, but I can't.
So I know the Postal 2 DLC that you did got massive positive reviews when that came out.
Yeah.
Was that goodwill that you created in that time? Is that when you decided to carry on and actually do the Postal 4?
No, that's when we decided to remake Postal 1. And it was a good learning experience. I mean, it was how we learned how to use Unreal 4, but it was also a learning experience in Postal 1 never was a big seller. Like, it's well known, but it's just not our popular game. Nobody cared about the isometric shooter view, the serious tone of it. And while we lightened up the tone a little bit for Redux, it just still never sold well. It never sold well on PC. It never sold well on PlayStation. But, long story, Redux was our first foray into console. You know, a company approached us a few years back and said, hey, we want to port Postal Redux to Switch. And we kind of laughed because, yeah, sure, buddy. I'm sure Nintendo's going to approve this. And they were like, no, Nintendo will approve this. And we're like, okay, well, it's your money. Have fun. And so they applied and they got approved for Switch, and they ported it, and they ported it to PlayStation, and they ported it to Xbox. And of course, it came out on Switch first and then PlayStation 4. Microsoft, for whatever reason, did not approve it. And that has carried on till today. They didn't approve Postal 4 either. But while Postal Redux is not some big seller, it was our first console game. So it is an important milestone for us that game ended up having the legs it did. I mean, it's been on sale on Steam since 2016. It's been on sale on PlayStation and Switch since 2020. So, it's still out there doing numbers, and it's our only game on Switch. I mean, Switch is definitely not a console that we would even attempt to put Postal 4 onto. But it is nice to know in the future that Switch is an option, that Nintendo consoles are an option for us. And for some reason, Microsoft consoles are not. But I'd like to say that we're now a PC and console developer.
So Postal 4 then.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest. Postal 2, I remember because I think I'd have been about 18, 20 years old when it came out. And that sort of game's perfect for me. You know, just the stupid humor, the violence, the grotesque bits of it. It made me chuckle. I quite enjoyed it. But getting older, because I'm in my early 40s now, I think my PC's upstairs and it's just sat, and it's a really old PC. I don't use it at all. I've got my PlayStation 5 and my Xbox Series X. So I've been out of the PC games for the last sort of 5 years, maybe. I mean, I'll be honest, I think I got an email from you guys, it must have been 2-3 years ago, about Postal 4. And because I don't have a PC, I just deleted it, and I've not thought about it since. So how has the game been received since it's come out?
Well, we put it out in early access in 2019, and we put it out in what would be considered a completely unreleasable state. We put it out mostly because we had to. We had this concept. We were originally working on a remake of Postal 2, and then we decided that, it's just too much work for a remake. So we said, let's make the next game. And it got to a point where, we needed to monetize. And so we used early access to help monetize the game, which it did do that. I mean, when we put it out, it was in a really, 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 really early alpha state. Janky as all hell, broken, but people didn't care. They were like, this is obviously the next Postal 2. Let's fund this shit. And it did really well on early access. And unfortunately, our heads got too big for the product, and we over-designed and we over-hired, and the design sort of just got away from us. And after about 2.5 years in early access, we needed to leave early access because early access sort of will only carry you so far, and you need to get to that 1.0 release to monetize some more. So we were using early access as a form of crowdfunding, and we definitely left early access a little too early, which we were very transparent about. We needed to come out of early access. We needed to monetize. And so last year, just over a year ago on 4/20/2022, we left early access, and the reviews were not great. I mean, the game was still in a fucked up state. It wasn't completely optimized yet, but like we said, we were honest about it, which didn't impress any press. That doesn't work. But we have been honest with our word, and we've spent every dollar we've made continuing to work on this game. And for the last year, we've continued to release updates. We paid a porting house in Ukraine to work on the console port and to help us with optimization. The optimization on the game has come a long way. The game works on a lot lesser PC now. It runs on a PS4, although I don't recommend that experience to anybody that could potentially play it on a PS5. But as of March 21st of this year, the game is out for PlayStation 4 and 5 now, and we are still continuing to work on this game for the foreseeable future. I mean, this is not abandonware. This is not Postal 3. We are spending every dollar we make on this game. I mean, just like Postal 2, people seem to have these rose-colored goggles with what Postal 2 is, and they think that this 20-year-old game has always been the game that it is today. It has not. The game was very buggy and janky for a really long time. I mean, full disclosure, the game's still very buggy and janky, and that's the way it's always going to be. But it does have 20 years of updates, mods incorporated, and just endless love that's been thrown at it from all corners of the earth. Postal 4 is going to be like that too, and people will hopefully in the future remember Postal 4 very differently than they do right now. I mean, there's definitely a subsection of Postal 2 fans that hate Postal 4 because it's not Postal 2. They wanted a game where you could shoot terrorists, and I don't know, we're not the same company we were in 2003. Like, there's definitely more slapstick humor. The game is meant to be way funnier than Postal 2 was. Postal 2 is a lot more black humor, and while it is significantly more slapsticky than Postal 1, we have definitely gone up in that regard. I mean, especially if you played Paradise Lost, like, you kind of know what you're getting with us. So there is a section of our fan base that just doesn't like Postal 4 because it doesn't have the exact same jokes as Postal 2, of which to say, I tell them, if you want to play Postal 2, play Postal 2. I mean, it's a different game. We're not making. We were remaking Postal 2, but then we stopped. So, and that is a possibility that one day we will finish that project. I mean, it was called Postal 2x2, and it was meant to be an HD remake of Postal 4 so that we can put it out on PlayStation. That product may still happen someday, but that's not what Postal 4 is. But Postal 4 has done very well, and it's continuing to sell. And now that it's out on PlayStation 4 and 5, it's selling even more. And I see a way more good fan comments than bad fan comments. I mean, there's haters in every walk of life, and that's just the way it is. And we make a very hot button game, so we expect love and hate, and even from our fans. So it's all good.
Well, now that I know it's on PlayStation 5, I will download it and play it. I will just like to say thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love talking to people who are very honest and candid with responses, not the ones who are like media trained just to try and brush things off.
Check out Postal 4 on PlayStation. It's amazing.
But yeah, I feel as though like when you're talking to people, especially people with passion, you can have good experience or bad experiences, but people just need to know the experiences you've had. So the games might be crap, but it's still a good story to hear how the games ended up that way. Because they don't want to design a bad game. But
no, nobody does. But I think the biggest problem with the industry itself, and this is, a little on both sides, most of the community has no idea what goes into making the game. But a lot of the industry doesn't seem to care what the community thinks, right? I mean, nowadays, every big game is coming out buggy and running like crap. And I mean, even the biggest titles, right? Like, it doesn't make me feel better overall that AAA titles are coming out in a fucked up state. That doesn't make me think to myself, well, it's okay that we did. I'm not particularly happy that we came out in the state we're in. I'm not even happy in the state we're at now. I mean, we're in a lot better place than we were 2-3 years ago or even 1 year ago, but we still should be further along. But I can sit here and say, like, we are an indie that has a hard time paying the bills. EA and Remedy, they're not having a hard time paying their bills. The fact that they released Jedi Survivor in the state it's in is pretty fucked up. And I mean, the director of the game from Remedy was pretty candid yesterday saying, like, EA actually offered him an extended schedule and they rejected it because they wanted to keep their timetable and not compete against other titles. That's fucked up. They had more time and more budget to do more things. We didn't. And I don't think that's a great excuse. I mean, I feel for the people that were pissed off about how our game was when it released, even though we were upfront and we've gone on to fix a lot of those problems. I feel for them. The bigger companies don't seem to care. I mean, Cyberpunk came out in a terrible state. Fucking the new Saints Row came out in a terrible state. All these games are coming out in really, really fucked up states. And yeah, game design has become an albatross, right? Like, the fans demand the best graphics, the biggest open worlds, the best performance, and those aren't going to happen anymore. I mean, as you see, these companies are committing to running 30 frames per second on PlayStation 5 because they need to keep these unrealistic expectations alive. And it's really screwy. And it's why I really like the boomer shooter industry, because it's sort of bringing back retro gaming. I mean, obviously, it's sort of gotten oversaturated, but retro gaming allows for much cooler games to happen with very low demand on specs and graphics, and they can run on any computer. I mean, we're getting new games in the build engine. Like, that's crazy, and I love it. But, in the mainstream here, like, people really want these big AAA titles, and they're getting really pissed off that they're buying these games for what is insane base prices. I mean, I just bought Jedi Survivor. It cost me $76, and I just bought the base level game, which is crazy. I mean, I get hate mail every day talking about how $40 is too much to charge for Postal 4 because it's been out for a year. And I'm like, actually, it just came out on PlayStation. It's a new game on PlayStation, and it's only $40. You could go buy Jedi Survivor, which is $70, and it has its fair share of problems. So, like, you're not gonna make everybody happy, but you just hope that you make the main core group of fans happy, and I think we've done that very well. This is a 25-year-old brand at this point, almost 26-year-old brand at this point. So it's been a long, windy, hilly road, but we're still here and we're still having fun.
So everyone's got PlayStation. Buy the new game.
Please. Please buy Postal 4 on PlayStation. When you buy it for $40, you actually get the PS4 and the PS5 copy. So if you're on a PS4 and you're planning to upgrade, you'll get that upgrade for free. And I highly recommend it. It's a much better experience.
So what is next for the Postal team? Well, running with scissors. That'll be Postal.
I mean, currently we're just working on Postal 4. We have co-op in development, and we're just constantly trying to make Postal 4 what we wanted it to be at launch, which clearly is a long time ago, but it doesn't matter. That's what we're working on. And it is possible that the next product will be that remake of Postal 2. We still have that other IP called Assault and Battery sitting on the shelf. It's a VR title that we worked on for a while, but it'd be nice to get that out one day. It just needs some updating and to be finished. But that whole IP could use a new game as well. I mean, it's not a game about Postal. It's actually kind of an adult game about toys. So can't speak much more about it, but it is a cool, different title, and maybe one day that'll come out.
So, how was VR been for you guys?
Terrible.
I think it's been a bit of a fad for a couple of years. Now it's kind of dying down again.
Yeah, I mean, VR development's really hard, actually. What is already very hard, which is working long hours and burying your head trying to get stuff working, all of a sudden you have to incorporate putting on and taking off a headset, which when things aren't working can make you really sick. So VR development kind of sucked. And it was a long time ago. I mean, we were working on a VR title in 2016 and 2017. So it was really early on, but it wasn't particularly fun. And the reason why we stopped is because of diminishing returns. I mean, yeah, there's more headsets out there now than there was then, but it's still a relatively high entry point, and there just isn't that many out there. So trying to make money on a VR title is very hard. And yeah, we're not completely in this to make money, but a product has to be able to break even for you to make it. But so
you need to live. At the end of the day,
exactly.
You guys need to live.
We do need to live, and living means making more games.
Yeah.
And while I would like to monetize the VR title we worked on one day, it will require us sinking more money into it to get it to that point. So it's hard to say. I mean, we all love VR here, but to this day, the only game that ever came out on VR, which I can say I completed in full and was a great experience, was Alex. And is that because it's made by Valve and it's a Half-Life game? Maybe I'm biased because I just wanted the next Half-Life game. But that's the only game I played where I felt it was a full gaming experience. And it still wasn't even that long. You know, it was 10, 11 hours, which is a really long VR experience. But it's just not a very long game overall. And it's still the only complete VR experience that I think has, you know, given people what they wanted out of VR. I mean, there's a lot of little games that are very cool. One being Moss. That's actually kind of the same concept of what we were working on with Assault and Battery, but it's still too nichey.
Yeah, I mean, I bought the PlayStation VR, unboxed it all, which took ages, all the wires and all the little components, played one lap of Drive Club, felt so ill, put everything back into the box, put it in the cupboard for 2 years, then I just sold it.
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm not playing that again.
I know. I have a couple of VR headsets here, and when I get them, I play with them for a little bit, and I have fun, and then I put it away, and I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. So, anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure talking. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you for having me, man.
Long live the Postal franchise. I love seeing the indie games and the underdogs still being there, still doing a good job.
Yeah, we're still here somehow, and we owe it all to the fans and the people that have bought our shit over the last 25 years. Thanks. That's all we say. We love our fans. We stay in contact with them every day, and we're only here because of them. So
thank you so much.
Of course.
Right, how do I stop this?
I don't know.
Oh, anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
And I'm serious. I will turn on the PlayStation. I will buy that game now.
Thank you for the support, my man. It means a lot.
It's absolutely fine. I loved the second one. I never played the third one. I wanted it when I saw it in the magazines for the Xbox 360.
Yep.
Did it ever come out for
Never
the
came out.
360? I don't think it did.
Yeah.
But
No.
I saw the pictures and it looked amazing. Was he holding like a badger up or something as a weapon?
Yep.
Or
Yep.
Wolverine or something?
Postal 3 had a lot of potential. It just never. The finished product was not even remotely finished, and it didn't get any love afterwards. So there's a couple of fan mods that are being worked on that sort of are supposed to be making it better. There's one that's been in development for a while. It's called Catharsis Reborn. It has potential, so hopefully somebody can make that game playable.
So I think sometimes you don't need the grand opera story. You just need something to turn on for 20 minutes and have a bit of a piss around.
That's what we try for. People ask me sometimes, what's your game about? And I'm like, it's actually a game about nothing.
Yeah.
Like, there's a plot, but it's sort of bullshit. I mean, the game is really just meant to be a pet rock. It's meant to be something where you can take out your aggressions and have some fun. I mean, that's it. I mean, if you go into Postal 4 on your PlayStation looking for like some grand operatic experience, it ain't going to be that. It really is the next Postal 2. And will it live up to what's in your head? Maybe, maybe not. But it is fun. And, just remember, it was made by less than 30 guys spread all over the world with passion. It's hard to make these fucking games. So when you run into bugs, let me know about them, but there's going to be bugs. So
it's absolutely cool. Oh, thank you so much. I will let you get on with your day.
Sounds good. Thank you, man. Bye.
Right. See ya.